Jagannath are here, Lord Jagannath is here, and all of you are here. So Sydney also has become a holy place. Don't be proud. Hare Krishna. So thank you for coming this evening. So I think I have 4 evening sessions in my stay here. And the topic is, anyone knows the topic? Glorious departures. What does that mean? What does glorious departures mean? Departure from what? From this world. In other words, we're talking about glorious deaths. So it means there's some deaths that are not glorious, some deaths that are glorious. So we'll try to talk about glorious departures from this world. But before that, let's chant Krishna's names for a while. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Jnana Tirandhasya Jnana Shalakaya Shukshurum Militam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhushtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sathyajatam Sadhakanaragunakanditam Tam Sajivam Sadhaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahakandalalita Shri Vishakhamritamscha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Rasamrita Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Veshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Evasya Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. No one likes to talk about death, isn't it? Very unpleasant topic. And somehow that's the topic I have to speak on for the next 4 classes. But we're going to speak about the positive aspect of it. For some people, death is a very depressing thing to talk about. It's very painful, very fearful, because death means devastation. Death means that all our ambitions and plans are foiled, defeated. So generally death is considered a sign of defeat. When death comes, everything is finished. So therefore one is defeated. And as they say, one bites the dust. That's the final biting of the dust. So therefore, the subject of death, even though it's all pervasive, it has been happening ever since this material world has existed. But the topic is not an easy one to talk about. It's also philosophically very fascinating. And the surprising thing is that in the world, there is still no clear understanding of what death is. Everyone understands one thing, that it's certain. But what actually it is, it's a mystery. We don't know. And therefore, because it's something that is unknown, it is feared. Because we think it's the be-all and end-all of it, it's the full stop. But people in the world do not generally appreciate that death is not a full stop, it's a comma. And it's a gateway to another future. One who realizes that he or she is going to a better place, to another place, doesn't get afraid. When you don't know where you're going, or if you think that this is the end of it, there's no more, then there is fear. So death is a gateway to some very blissful existence for those who are spiritually self-realized, who are God-conscious. So death is a cause of celebration for such people. But for those whose dreams, aspirations, hopes, lives, thinking is invested only in the material world, for them death is the ultimate defeat, ultimate loss. It's disappointment, sadness, grief. Because for them, death means another birth, further bondage in this material world. That is, if they understand that there is such a phenomenon. Even if they don't understand, it's going to happen anyway. Because the laws of nature don't bother whether we know about them or not. Right? If I touch fire, fire is not going to think, oh, does he know about me or not? Only if he knows about me, I'll burn him. If he doesn't know about me, it's all right, I'll spare him. So reincarnation will work whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not. So for those who do understand that there is something called reincarnation, at least there's some relief because they know it's not a full stop. But for those who believe this is the all in all, for them it can be devastating. So when we understand the true nature of this phenomenon called death, and appreciate how death can actually help us to go to a higher destination. Death is a gateway. It's not something that we should be afraid of. It's not something that we should be terrified of, that we shouldn't want to talk about it. One time I remember one person asked me after a lecture, he said, why do you people always talk of such depressing things, death, death? Can't you talk of something pleasing, something nice? I said, yeah, we talk of so many nice things, like Krishna's pastimes, but you come to hear. There's so many wonderful things, but in order to appreciate Krishna's pastimes, to appreciate many, many other spiritual topics, it requires a certain degree of taste and understanding for this type of topic or this type of discussion. So therefore one has to come to the association of spiritually minded people, hear the Bhagavad Gita philosophy, understand what the soul is, what the body is, what the world is, what God is, what karma is, what reincarnation is. One has to understand all these things, and then one comes to the platform of appreciating the really positive things in life. That's Krishna consciousness. Unless we understand the reality, the harsh reality of this world, we're never going to look for a solution. We're never going to look for something beyond. So I told the person, it's like telling a student about the exam at the end of the year, at least study something. And the student says, why are you talking about negative things all the time? Examination, examination. Can't you talk about all the fun we'll have all through the year? Cutting classes and doing so many other things. Well, all right, it's part of life. You can do things, but then you have to pass the examination to get your degree, and then you can go out into the world and get a job or whatever it is. So similarly, for people who say, why do you talk about such depressing things as death? First of all, it's not such a depressing thing when you understand what it is all about, and if you're prepared for it. And the second point is that actually it's very necessary, important, beneficial for us to know about these things. It's a harsh reality that we have to face. And when we become devotees of Krishna, it doesn't become a harsh reality. It's just a beautiful, sublime reality. And it's not even seen as something that's very tragic or drastic. It's just a seamless transition. Because for a devotee who's in Krishna consciousness, while living the person is Krishna conscious, and at death he or she is Krishna conscious, after death the next destination will be a Krishna conscious one. Wherever that person may be, the devotee will be thinking about Krishna and serving Krishna. Narayana paraha sarve na kutaschana bibhyati svaraka pavarga narkeshva pitulyartha darshinaha. So whether one is on earth, whether one is in hell, one is in heavenly planets, whether one is liberated, a devotee of Lord Narayan or Krishna is never afraid. Na kutaschana na bibhyati, that in any situation, a devotee of the Lord is not afraid. Because wherever he or she goes, there will only be devotional service. So therefore death can never be a source of fear for a pure devotee, for one whose consciousness is always absorbed in Krishna. It's a seamless transition to another phase of service, to another phase of devotional ecstasy, perhaps to another physical location, but that doesn't really matter so much. In any case, it's very important that we at least remind ourselves of the inevitability of death, meaning that death is going to come. There's a saying in English, as sure as death. Or some smart person said one time, I forget who, it's a famous quote. He said, there's only two things certain in this world, death and taxes. We have to live with that. And even though it's something that is so certain, it's a topic we never like to face head on. We always want to avoid it because it conjures up very unpleasant ideas in our mind. But the fact is that we have to confront this topic and overcome it and learn how to face death. In the Mahabharata we find this verse, Ahani ahani bhutani gachanti hayamalayam sheshaha sthavar vichanti kim ascharyamatah param. King Yudhishthira is asked the question, tell me what is the most surprising thing in this world? What's the most amazing thing? And Yudhishthira's reply is that every day, ahani ahani, day after day, Bhutani, we see the living entities day after day, Gachanti, are going Yamalayam, to the abode of Yamaraj, who is the god of death. It's a poetic way of saying that every day, day after day, we see or hear of people who are dying. But those who are not yet dead, Sheshaha, those who are still alive, Sthavara Vichanti, they want to stay on forever, they don't want to die, thinking that it's not going to happen to me. There's a plane accident, many people die. We are shocked. we express our sorrow and we commiserate with those who are relatives of those who died. We say many things to give solace, but then we never think it could happen to me as well. None of the people who sit in a plane that crashes could ever, or probably would think that today will be my last day. But it happens, such is the nature of death. So those who are not dead, Yudhishthira says, think it will never happen to them. Kim ascharya matah param. What can be more surprising than that? You know, the Srimad Bhagavatam is spoken by Shukadev Goswami to King Parikshit. Most historic, monumental, wonderful conversation that contains the complete devotional science that we need to know to perfect our lives. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, King Parikshit was cursed to die in 7 days. Now he was fortunate. He was given a clear time in which he would die. You have 7 days notice. So prepare yourself. So for him, he was clear, okay, this is the time and I have to prepare myself for it. So we may think, well, I don't have such a notice. It's indefinite, it's going to come. I know death is going to come, but it's uncertain, it can come anytime. So then, why should I start preparing now? Right? But the fact is that like King Parikshit was given notice, we have all been given notice. The notice has been delivered, signed, sealed, delivered to us. When was that notice delivered to us? When we were born. Mrityur janmavatam vira dehena sahajayate. Vasudev tells Kamsa, the cruel and evil uncle of Krishna, who wants to kill Vasudev's wife Devaki just after she's been married to Vasudev. He tells him, oh hero, you shouldn't kill like that. He gives many reasons, and ultimately he says that, look, in any case, death is born with birth. So why should you try to evade death like that? Don't be afraid of death. You're a hero. You should be fearless in the face of death. So death is born with birth. In other words, the moment the body appears in this world, we understand that death is certain. There is a notice that death will come. This is a fact of life. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Jatasya hi dhruvam mrityu, dhruvam janma mritasya cha. He says, for one who is born, death is certain. For one who dies, birth is certain. So the cycle of birth and death is certain. So the fact that death is inevitable is something that one has to keep in mind. Always, Srila Prabhupada says. But then, one time when somebody asked the question, if you're always going to think that I'm going to die sometime, we're going to be in a state of depression, or we'll develop some kind of psychological problem thinking I'm going to die. But that's not what Prabhupada means. What he means to say is that live your life with the understanding that it's not going to last forever. Plan. Think for something beyond this material existence. Think of a phase where you won't have to be born again in this material body. Think of a goal that is higher than just the enjoyment of this world. Think beyond. Chanakya has also said that if you want to be successful materially, then think that you're never going to die. Why so? Because if you think you're going to die, you're going to say, what am I working so hard for? What am I undergoing so much struggle for? What is the use of it all? Anyway, everything is going to get taken away from me. So what is the purpose of it all? And then he goes on to say, if you want to be successful spiritually, then always remember that you're going to die. Because then you'll remember the futility of this material existence. That everything is going to get finished anyway, so might as well focus our energies on spiritual development, and as far as material development is concerned, we put in our honest endeavor, and whatever comes by way of destiny, it will come. So the genuine spiritualist is content with reasonable, honest endeavor for the maintenance of the body. The spiritualist doesn't excessively strive for material achievements, goods, enjoyment, and so on, knowing that this is not the goal of life. So when Srila Prabhupada asks us to be always mindful of the fact that death will come, what he's cautioning us is that we should be thinking carefully about the way we live. That our way of life, our lifestyle, our purpose of living shouldn't be simply within this world. Different people, of course, have different approaches to death. Some people have what we can call the ostrich approach. The ostrich approach is to just not think about it. You know the famous act of the ostrich, I think. In Australia you have many ostriches, right? You do? That's the kiwi. What's the famous bird here? Kangaroo. Emu. Okay. Anyway, so the ostrich is famous for putting its head in the ground, in the sand, when confronted with a danger. If there's an animal attacking or something, the ostrich thinks, if I just put my head in the sand, I won't see the danger coming, so I'm okay. That's called the ostrich approach. So we think death is coming, but no, I'm closed my eyes. No, it's not coming. I forget about it. I forget. There's nothing like death. And I go about my other activities as if there is no death. And indeed, if it wasn't for that, nobody would be able to try to enjoy this world. So some people like to just keep it out of their minds. They don't even want to consider such a possibility. They're fearful. For them it's depressing. And they try to push it away from the mind as much as they can. But that's escapism. Then there's another category of people who say, no, we're not escapists. We're not worried about death. We don't mind facing death. And they're disciples of an atheistic philosopher called Charvaka. Charvaka's philosophy was, Rinam kritva kritam pivet yavat jivet sukham jivet. Beg, borrow or steal, but enjoy life. Somehow or the other, have a lot of worldly enjoyment. Eat, drink and be merry. Bhasmi bhutasya dehasya kim punaragamano bhavet. At death, this body is going to turn to ashes and dust. Who's seen the next life? Some people say there's a soul, there's afterlife. Who has seen that? So why do you worry about these things? Because generally a person who's aware of the law of karma, about transmigration of the soul, would always think about the consequences of the karma that he or she performs. So a genuinely intelligent person will be mindful of the actions that are performed. But a Charvaka follower would say, well, it doesn't matter, just strive for enjoyment. Eat, drink and be merry. As far as karma in the next life, who has seen it? Nobody knows that there's such a thing. So therefore they say just enjoy. So they also say we don't worry about death, but they lose out the very essence of their life. They don't know why they're living. Their life begins with birth and ends with death. It's a meaningless existence. Life has no purpose for them. Life somehow by chance has happened. They think of life as a combination of chemicals and atoms and molecules. And life has somehow started. And now one day it will end. Just like any instrument, one day it has a beginning, it's created, then it's an expiry period and you dispose it off. But life is not just a meaningless clutch of atoms and molecules and chemicals. There is more to life than that. So gradually one has to come to the point to understand that life has a spiritual purpose. There is something more than just enjoyment of this world. So a genuine spiritualist who wants to face death in the proper way has to at least think of two things. One, such a spiritualist must understand the inevitability of the destruction of the body. Keep that in mind. But if you keep only that in mind, you'll get depressed. So you have to keep the positive side in mind of the eternality of the soul. The soul is eternal. The body goes, but I don't die. I am alive. I am forever, eternally alive and conscious. And especially if we are devotees of Krishna, then death for us is simply an entrance into eternal life. Srila Prabhupada used to give the analogy of the cat and the kitten on one hand, and the monkey and the mother monkey and the baby monkey on the other hand. This is called Marjana Nyaya and Markata Nyaya. Marjana in Sanskrit means a cat. Nyaya means a logic. If you've seen a cat carrying its kitten, the cat will hold the kitten by the scruff of its neck in its jaws and carry the kitten from one place to another place. So the kitten doesn't have to do anything. The kitten simply is just there with them, just surrenders to the mother. And the mother does everything, picks the kitten up, takes it to another place and another place. And the monkey, the baby monkey, clings on to the mother. So that's the effort of the aspiring devotee. So both represent different approaches towards surrender to Krishna. But either way, they are being protected by Krishna. But if you consider a rat in the mouth of a cat, the perspectives and the vision of the jaws of the cat vastly differ. The kitten looks at the jaws of the cat as shelter personified, as protection, as love. And the rat sees those jaws as death personified, as pain, as fear. So the jaws are the same, the cat is the same, but the kitten and the rat, they see the jaws differently. So similarly, materialistic people who have no spiritual conception would look at death in one way, and devotees of the Lord who are blissful in any condition, before death, after death, at death, they look at death in another perspective. They will see death as the entrance into eternal life in the kingdom of God. It's an entrance into Krishna's pastimes in the spiritual world. So therefore, for us, we are not afraid of death. We are simply saying, yes, let us learn how to depart from this world in a good way, in the best possible way. Let's make our departure glorious. We have to go, so let's do it well. Some people have a glorious departure from a material point of view. In every country, there are heroes, martyrs, who sacrifice their life for a cause, maybe the country, they fought a war on behalf of the country or something. So every country has its share of martyrs and heroes who have laid down their life for helping others or for the country, defense of the country, and so on. So however noble that may be from the point of view of the people in that country, the fact is it's still not a completely spiritual thing, because the person still has to take birth again. The person still gets another material body, and the person will still die again. So birth and death will continue. It will not stop. However, if we become pure devotees of Krishna and we leave this world thinking of Krishna, then we will be happy and blissful as we leave, without a care in this world, without attachment to this world. We will not be fearful, we will not be grief-stricken, Because we have no attachments in this world. To the degree we are attached to the material things of this world, to that extent death is more painful. And the moment of death is our test. And usually it is the accumulation of what we have done throughout our life that will determine the state of consciousness at death. Sometimes people say, well, you say that we should think of God at the time of death, so let me eat, drink and be merry, and just at the time of death I'll think of God and go back to Godhead. That's because people always want to find a loophole. That's the nature of this material. If the signal is something, you're looking for some way to beat the signal, to beat the traffic, to beat the law. It's the nature of the mind to look for ways out. So similarly, we're thinking of cheating the laws of nature. Let me just do whatever I want, and just at the very last moment I'll think of Krishna. Because after all, Krishna says, Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yeha prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayaha. In the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Antakale, at the final moment, cha mam eva smaran, whoever remembers me, Krishna says, muktva kalevaram, when he gives up his body, yeha prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayaha. He will definitely attain to my abode. Know this free of any doubt, O Arjuna. In other words, a person who thinks of Krishna at the time of death will die a glorious death, will be able to attain to Krishna's abode, and then will attain eternal life, a life of bliss and freedom, eternality. So then if somebody says, well, all my life I'll just eat, drink and be merry, and just at the time of death, I'll think of Krishna and have a glorious death. Okay, so what do you say to this person? How would you respond? Let's say your friend came and told you this, and you're trying to speak something about Krishna consciousness, and then this person responds like this. How would you reply?
You only remember what you've done most of your life.
Yes, you only remember at death what you've done throughout your life. Let's come back to the example of a student and the exam. I know of several students and heard of them through some students who don't know the exam, the topic of the exam, subject of the exam the next day. And tomorrow's exam, they go at 10 o'clock at night asking, what's the paper tomorrow? Right? And then they'll stay up all night and get notes from this one and ask this one, try selective questions that you could probably have to pass. And then one student was telling me that he had a fellow student in the hostel who used to do this, and he would have coffee and tea and everything to keep himself awake all night. And then he started taking a tablet to keep himself awake. Unfortunately, he took the wrong tablet that puts you to sleep. So he ended up sleeping all through the exam. So it's a very risky thing. So imagine if there's a student who doesn't prepare all year, doesn't attend the classes, doesn't study the books, and just at the very last minute says, let me open the book and study. Is that the student going to get good marks? Is he going to be able to pass? Not likely. Similarly, if all our life we don't practice Krishna consciousness, we don't practice remembering Krishna, how is it possible that we can remember Him with devotion at death? If we think we can cheat Krishna, but Krishna is just among cheats, I am the gambling. Krishna is the greatest cheat. He can cheat us so quickly at the moment of death, he'll twist our consciousness and our mind will be diverted from Him, even if we want to. And of course, the second argument we can give to such a person is that we don't know when death will come. We may have our good plan that, well, I'll get a good notice for death, and then I'll start preparing at the last moment. but death can come without notice. So therefore it is better to prepare for death in advance by living a Krishna conscious life, and then at the time of death it will be natural for us to think of Krishna. Even if somebody is very pious, but if that person has some material attachments, those material attachments will come up. One devotee was telling a little funny story, it's a real story. He says he went to a certain village in Nepal, and there was this elderly man who was about to leave his body. He was about to die. And the family members had all gathered around him, and he was some kind of a businessman, and he had a large family over which he presided. And they had property, land, and so on. And he was there in his last moments, and the family members had gathered, and he looked at all of them, and they were waiting expectantly to hear something from him. And he was making some serious effort to rise a little bit and gather the energy to speak some last words. So all the family members were expecting some pearls of wisdom to come. Something very profound would come drop from his lips, and he would give some parting instruction that would be something they would cherish all their life or something like that. So he looked up and he seemed a little irritated. And then he looked at the corner of the room and he pointed there and said in an irritated tone, "Just see, the cow is eating the broom there and you people are not doing anything about it." And he died. Meaning that he was trying to say that, how are you people going to look after the estate after I leave? You're not even looking and caring for such things. Just see how this cow is coming and eating away things here, and you're just so inattentive to all these things. What will happen after I go? So his consciousness was so absorbed in his business affairs and his family affairs that there was no way he could think of anything spiritual. So his mind was absorbed in that broom, and he was thinking of how there was a loss of a certain amount of money because the broom was spoiled, and they would have to spend more money to buy another broom. And the mind can sometimes deceive, even for pious people. The same devotee was telling me of another incident where a pious lady was about to leave the world. She was elderly. She was a vegetarian strictly throughout her life because of her religious beliefs. But she cooked because some of her family members wanted. And maybe she had eaten in childhood, I don't know exactly. So when she was asked, she was about to die, and they asked her, "What's your last wish?" She said, "I want to eat meat." Of all things that she could ever ask for and think about, this was the thing she asked, her last wish. I want to eat meat. So death, we cannot try to cheat nature. Unless we are thoroughly 100% Krishna conscious throughout our life, and we prepare for it for as long as we can, from as early as possible, it will not be possible for us to be Krishna conscious at death. And if we are not Krishna conscious at death, we will be conscious of something else. It's either Krishna or something else. And if it's something else, then we have to be born again in this world. And what we will be in the next life, where we will be born, in what circumstances, that will depend on the kind of karma we have performed in this life. So therefore the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam kyajatyante kalevaram tam tam eva iti kaunteya sada tadbhava bhavitaha." Whatever one's state of consciousness at the time of death, O Arjuna, that state one will attain in the next birth. So if one has led a very animalistic existence a very hedonistic life, then one will get an appropriate birth like that. One will not get a divine birth. One will not be able to go back to Krishna. One will be forced to come back to the cycle of birth and death. So depending on whether we perform good karma, bad karma, we will get a good destination or a bad destination. We'll get a situation of relative happiness or a situation of relative misery, but we'll still be born in this world of misery. There's another famous, or not famous, but another incident that comes to mind which I relate very often. And this is about an elderly lady again who was about to die. And she was in a hospital, and the doctor who was attending to her was a devotee. And so he realized that she had only a few minutes left to live. So he told the relatives that, I'm sorry, it's only a few minutes more now. And so he went up to her. He took permission from the family. Do you mind if I ask her to chant Hare Krishna? So they said, no, we have no problem. They weren't believers, so they weren't very particular about it. So, okay, we have no problem, you can go and say it. So he went to the lady. She was conscious, but she was very weak. She was hardly able to speak anything. She was opening her eyes. Whatever was being spoken was registering in her mind. She was able to understand, but she wasn't able to gather the energy to speak. So then he told her, she was a little hard of hearing also. So he told her, chant Hare Krishna. In the local language he told her, chant Hare Krishna. She gave a blank stare. So he chanted a little louder, thinking maybe she's hard of hearing, so he should speak it a little louder. So he said, chant Hare Krishna. So no response, blank. Again, chant Hare Krishna. Then he went into her ears and he spoke loudly, chant Hare Krishna, because he knew she had only moments left to live. So he was feeling, at least if she dies, chanting Hare Krishna, hearing Krishna's name, there will be some benefit for her. In the next life she may become a devotee. So after he had done that several times, then this lady became very irritated. Her brow became furrowed. And then she gathered a lot of energy. And with that energy, even though she wasn't able to speak, but she vigorously shook her head one time. No. No. What she meant was, I will not chant Hare Krishna. And then she died. Of course, she had heard the Hare Krishna, at least she heard Hare Krishna a couple of times from this devotee, doctor. So at least that was good. But she refused. She said no. It took a lot of energy for her to shake her head like that, so strongly. And the same energy she could easily have used to say Hare Krishna. It wouldn't have cost her anything. But she was just adamant that she wouldn't chant Hare Krishna at death. Srila Prabhupada used to give that little anecdote about two people who were very stubborn. And they had arguments with each other. You know how it is when you deal with somebody who's very stubborn? So best thing is to put that stubborn person with another stubborn person. And let them work out amongst themselves. So there are two people who were very stubborn and they were talking about something. One was saying, no, the solution is the scissor. And the other was saying, no, the solution is the knife. So they were arguing about it, and no one was willing to let go. Finally, the person who was saying knife, he picked up the other person in a fit of anger and threw him into the river nearby. And as Providence would have it, the person who was thrown in the river didn't know swimming. So he was drowning. But as he was drowning, he wanted to give a parting repartee, a parting response to that person. As he was drowning, he was going down, but he was doing this. Meaning that there was scissor is right, scissor is right. So I may die, but still the scissor will prevail. So it's like that. So if people are stubbornly refusing to take Krishna's name at the time of death, what can we do? But still the devotees are so compassionate and kind. They go up to these people and they chant Hare Krishna to them and they induce them to somehow or the other remember Krishna or chant Krishna's names. So therefore, the idea of us remembering Krishna at death is not such an easy or a cheap thing. It has to be cultivated assiduously, lifelong, very carefully, sincerely. Then one will be able to remember Krishna at death. Then we will have a glorious departure. Then it doesn't matter where we live or what we are doing, the gender, the community, nationality, all these things will not matter. The only important thing that Krishna sees is, are we remembering him with devotion or not? If we are, then we will attain perfection. If not, then we have to come back again and again. And this will happen till such time as we are able to remember Krishna perfectly. So this is what the goal of life is. The goal of life is to have a glorious departure. The goal of life is to learn how to die. And the great devotees of the Lord have given their best lessons in the form of their death. So the last lesson is usually their best lesson. Because in their death, by their very examples, they teach us how we should die and how we should prepare. So if we want to die like them, then we should also live like them, in the sense that we should follow in their footsteps. Gain inspiration from their teachings and their life. And then we will also, hopefully by the mercy of the Lord and the devotees, be able to have a perfect passing away from this world. Death is actually a very painful experience. The scriptures give various descriptions of how painful it is. But nevertheless, if one's mind is absorbed in Krishna, then despite the pain, one has trained one's mind to think of Krishna, then Krishna will be very merciful and he will allow us to remember him despite the physical pain. And as we continue like this, in preparation for that ultimate moment, then Krishna will ensure that we attain perfection. Sometimes there is a question that is asked. Alright, we've been doing Krishna consciousness all our life, and we're preparing for death, and we're reasonably hopeful that because we practice Krishna consciousness very sincerely throughout our life, when death comes, then we'll be able to think of Krishna. But if death comes all of a sudden when we're not expecting it, and we don't have time to actually try to think of Krishna, or if death comes in when we are sleeping, that's very common, isn't it? Many people die in their sleep. So what would happen? Would all my remembrance of Krishna go in vain? Then does it mean that I will not be able to have a glorious departure from this world? If a pure devotee dies in his or her sleep, will that devotee go back to Godhead? Go back to Krishna's abode or not? What do you think?
Yes.
Good. Everyone is certain, but why?
Because if we don't remember Krishna, Krishna will remember him.
Okay, that's a very nice point. Even if we are in our sleep and we are not able to remember Krishna, Krishna will remember us and take us back. So why will Krishna remember us? What induces Krishna to remember us?
Because we've remembered him.
Because we've remembered him when?
Throughout
Throughout our life, or as many years as possible, or as much as we could. From the time we were exposed to Krishna consciousness, we tried our best to remember him, to to serve Him and to love Him. So Krishna is a very grateful God. So He remembers our smallest little service. Ishvara Swabhav Bhaktir Nala Aparad Alpa Seva Bahumani Atma Paryanta Prasad. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it is mentioned that the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is that He doesn't consider the offenses of His devotees against Him seriously at all. Sometimes a baby may slap the mother or the father. The mother-father doesn't go to the police station. This baby has slapped my face. Sometimes babies can do that, pull their hair and they do all sorts of things. They can throw things at you. So you don't take it seriously. So similarly, the Supreme Lord doesn't take the offenses of His devotees seriously, even if they are offenses. But on the contrary, if somebody renders even a little bit of service to Him, Alpa Seva, Alpa means very little, Seva means service. So even if somebody has rendered very little service to Krishna, He considers that very great, Bahumani. And so much so that for that very little service that the devotee has rendered to Him, He is willing to even give Himself up utterly to that devotee. Atma Paryanta Prasad. Atma Paryanta means even up to the point of giving Himself up to the devotee. So Krishna can even do that. And that is why He doesn't give Krishna consciousness that easily. Because He has to give Himself up to the devotee. So for the pure devotee, even if the devotee dies or leaves his or her body in a situation where one is not externally conscious, in sleep or something like that, and is not able to physically remember Krishna, but Krishna will remember the devotee and will take care of the devotee and ensure that the devotee will go back to Godhead. One devotee was giving an interesting analogy or metaphor to explain this point. When I think I explained this in my previous visit here in one class, I remember. Now when you go to work, you get a salary for the month. How many working days in a month? Working days? About 25, roughly. And you get a salary for how many days? 30 days. Right? You work only for 25 days, but your salary is for 30 days. So that you get salary for 5 days without working in a month. Am I right?
No.
Why are you not confidently replying yes? Yes, isn't it? You're sure? Are you confident about that?
That's only for full-time employees, not the...
Yeah, full-time. I'm talking of full-time. We'll not get into the technicalities of part-time and full-time. He's a full-time employee, but he has weekends off. So, doesn't go to work for 5 or 6 days, 4 or 5 days in a month, but gets the full salary for the month, as if he or she had worked for the whole month. So there's a clever employee. So the employee approaches the boss and says, look, you're paying me for 30 days even though I'm working only for 25. So what I'll do is, I'll quit the job. But anyway, you were paying me 5 days without working. So you can continue to pay me those 5 days salary. You get the point? Now, is the boss going to say yes? No. Why not? What will he say?
You're not working, get out.
Yeah, he may say that. But what would he respond? What would the logic be?
You're not an employee.
But basically he will say that you get this 5 months salary without working because you're working the other 25 days. If you don't work the other 25 days, then you're not entitled to this 5 days of free salary. So if you quit the job, you're not working the other 25 days, you're not entitled to the 5 days of salary. So similarly, if a devotee is working hard, remembering Krishna, serving Krishna with devotion for as long as possible, if somehow or the other death comes when one is not externally conscious, still the salary will come. You get the analogy?
Yes.
Even though you may not have been able to actually remember Krishna at the time of death, but the salary will come, which means you will get the benefit. However, if somebody hasn't practiced remembering Krishna, then there's no way that person can remember Krishna. No question of salary anymore. So as devotees, our goal is to remember Krishna and try to act in such a way that we will be able to think of Krishna at death. And the way to practice that is to try to remember Krishna in difficult circumstances. Because death is the most difficult event that we're going to have to face in our life. The greatest challenge. So let's start with the small challenges in life. Somebody said something to us that got us irritated. Immediately we think of so many other colorful things. Rather we should think of Krishna at that time. So practice remembering Krishna in the little challenges that we have in our day-to-day life. First, let's begin with that. That's our practice for the biggest challenge. Because when you are learning something, you start with small things. You take baby steps. If you're learning a sport or learning anything, any technique for something, you start simple, in the simple way, the small things. So here also, in order to prepare for our perfect departure from this world, glorious departure, we have to start by practicing remembering Krishna in the little experiences and the little things of this world. And Krishna will give us plenty of opportunity every day. Because every day there are things that happen in our life that we don't like. Am I right? As you're driving a car, somebody comes in your way, or something happens. Something or the other is constantly happening in this material world. Numberless things in life happen day after day to irritate us, annoy us, to make us sad or angry. So here are occasions where we try to remember Krishna. And remember, it's not only in times of pain or distress that we should practice remembering Krishna. We have to practice remembering Krishna even in good times, quote unquote good times. Because we may think when something is good, when success comes, we may start claiming credit for ourselves. You see, I actually did it so well. I got the gold medal at the university because I was so brilliant. Or I bagged this contract, made $1 million because I was such a good businessman. So we may start taking credit for things ourselves. And when success comes, we start appropriating that credit also. Think, yeah, I'm the cause of it. And then we forget Krishna. So when I speak of practicing remembering Krishna in the small things in life, I'm speaking of all types of experiences, not necessarily only those that give pain, but even in pleasure, even in neutral situations, we should practice remembering Krishna. Then we can be reasonably sure that we will be able to, by Krishna's mercy, remember him at the time of death. It's serious business, but it can also be fun. So Krishna consciousness is fun. It's not a boring thing. It's a transcendental adventure. So there's numerous innovative and creative ways that you can remember Krishna in. And Prabhupada was a genius. A pure devotee of the Lord is a genius because he devises numerous innovative ways to engage the general population in devotional service so that they can somehow or the other remember Krishna. Yena kena prakarena manaha Krishna niveshayet. Somehow or the other, by hook or by crook, one should remember Krishna. That's the goal of the Vedic scriptures. That's the goal of life. We have to remember with devotion, of course, not like Kamsa was remembering with anger, hatred, fear, and so on. So this is what our life is meant for. And the great acharyas have, and the great devotees in history, they have shown by their personal example of how they departed from this world. So over the next 3 lectures, I'll try to talk about a few pure devotees depending on how it goes and how much time we have. We'll talk about Dhruva Maharaj and how he departed from this world. We'll talk about Prithu Maharaj and how he departed from this world. A brief mention of Madhavendra Puri, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. We'll also talk about Haridas Thakur and how he departed from this world. Maybe if time permits, a brief discussion on how Bhishma left this world. Ideal departures, ideal death. So the art of dying is a very important art for us. The art of dying is perfected by those who have learned the art of Krishna conscious living. So the art of Krishna conscious living will help us to perfect the art of dying. Then our life is successful. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we stop here. I'll leave some time for questions. Yes.
Maharaj, what about little babies or kids who haven't started being Krishna conscious yet? So how would do they go back to Godhead, or what happens to this?
The question is that what about babies who are not able to practice Krishna consciousness properly? Do they go back to Godhead or not?
Yes.
The general principle is only one who is a pure devotee of Krishna goes back to Godhead. So the baby has become a pure devotee somehow or the other from the previous life's Krishna consciousness, and there's some exceptional mercy in this life, then maybe the baby can go back to Godhead. If not, probably has to wait. In the examination of death, you know what the pass mark is? The universities, how much is it in Australia? What's the pass mark? 50%. And in the University of Death, what is the pass mark? 100%. 100% pass mark. You have to remember Krishna. So even if we are remembering 90%, Krishna will give us a very favorable birth in the next life. We can be born in a family of devotees, and from very babyhood or childhood we can practice Krishna consciousness. Okay? Yes.
Thank you for the nice answer, Maharaj. Just going back to the point where you said there are nice devotees and the death may come in sleep. On the other hand, there are devotees that could be, we're talking about very, very highly elevated decades and centuries of devotion, and for them it looks like sometimes death may come very, apparently appear like unjust and traumatized. When we hear or see those kind of things, it can be discouraging, thinking if they can have a traumatizing and disturbing and unfair end like that, what's the chance of us? How can we get over that?
Your question is that many great devotees had deaths that seem to be very unfair or traumatic deaths. So if that's so for such great devotees, then what about us ordinary devotees? Yes? You see, for great devotees, like the Pandavas and so on, or Bhishma, Krishna orchestrates their departures from this world to teach us how we should plan to depart from this world. Because we all need ideal examples, role models in our life. So when we look at these great devotees and see how they were steadfast in their Krishna consciousness, they never wavered even a little bit, even in the greatest difficulties in life. They had to undergo so many trials and tribulations, but they never forgot Krishna. They never became ungrateful to Krishna. They never blamed Krishna. They remained devoted to him and left the world thinking of him in devotion. So such cases are extreme cases are there for our instruction. So that we learn that look, the kind of difficulties that these great devotees had are so great compared to the little difficulties that I have. So why should I grumble so much about and complain about my difficulties? So my situation is so much easier and better than these great devotees. So it's inspirational for us. That is why some of these great devotees were placed in such circumstances, so that they could teach by their behavior and their example in those situations to the rest of the world. Okay? Yes?
Thanks, Maharaj. Thank you for a beautiful class. You mentioned that devotees are merciful and they spread Krishna's name even though people don't want to hear it. I was just wondering how far do we have to keep trying that even though they're very adamant that they don't want to speak? And if they don't want to take up Krishna consciousness, do we take it as our downfall that we haven't presented to them? Or how do we take that?
Okay, so the question is the devotees are very compassionate and they want to give Krishna to everybody. But what if somebody is very adamant and doesn't want to receive Krishna consciousness? How far do we keep on trying? And if we are unsuccessful, is that our failure and our downfall? First and foremost, we cannot force people to do things. Even Krishna didn't force Arjuna. He told him the whole Bhagavad Gita, and then he said, Yathechasi tatha kuru. My dear Arjuna, I have told you what I have to say. Now you may do as you please. So similarly, when we want to give Krishna to others, we can't force them. We just try to offer Krishna to them in a way that we think will be palatable to them. We give them prasadam, we give them the holy name, we give them some philosophy if they're willing to hear. But we don't try to impose it on them in general. Now this particular instance where I talked about the doctor trying to do it to the patient, there may be various legal restrictions and constraints in various countries that you can't do that to unwilling patients or unwilling people. So you have to be cautious about that. But yes, we have to recognize that our duty is to give in as reasonable and compassionate and sensible a manner as possible. And then it's between that person and Krishna, whether he or she will accept or not. And as far as us being failures, if we are not successful, not really. Success or failure is not in the result on the path of yoga. It is in the effort that we are successful. If we sincerely try on behalf of Krishna, trying to be his instrument, Krishna is pleased with that effort. Ultimately, the result is given by Krishna. So even if somebody does take to Krishna consciousness as a result of our speaking or acting, it's ultimately Krishna in the heart of that person who has changed that person's heart. So we shouldn't be taking the credit. We have simply had the fortune of being used as instruments by Krishna. And sometimes Krishna may choose for his own reasons to not inspire that person to take to Krishna consciousness. So either way, what is Krishna looking at from us? He is looking at our sincere endeavor. So we have to use our intelligence, we have to be sincere about wanting to give Krishna to people. And then we leave it to Krishna. So do your best, and to Krishna leave the rest. Right? Any other question? One last question, yes.
Maharaj, you mentioned once that devotees should not endeavor for excessive material gain. The question is, what is the fine line between excessive and not so excessive?
Okay, the question is that it was mentioned in the class that we should not endeavor for excessive material gain. So where is the fine line when we say, okay, this is excessive and this is not excessive? The same question came up twice in Melbourne when I was there, just a few days ago, 2 or 3 days ago. 2 people asked the same question in different sessions. And the answer is very simple as far as I can see. Whatever you have now, that's it. That's reasonable. Now we have a fairly decent, comfortable way of living. Be satisfied with that. And if there is more opulence of wealth in your destiny, it will come. We have to continue our honest, intelligent endeavor, reasonable endeavors. We are not stopping our endeavors. Let's say someone's a businessman. He's not going to stop doing business. He'll continue doing business, and if it's there in his destiny, he's using his intelligence, he's working hard, reasonably hard, then if that has to come, it will come, the wealth. So we begin by being satisfied with what we have now, here and now. So that solves all debates. So no confusion. Otherwise it's always a debatable thing, but this much for somebody, that much for someone. Everyone's needs are different. What is luxury for one is necessity for another. We can have so many arguments and discussions have no end. It's an important topic to talk about. Even that, we should analyze that also. But the short answer is that let's just be satisfied with what we have now. And leave it to destiny if destiny wants to give us more later. And focus our valuable energy and time on Krishna consciousness. Alright, so it's 9 o'clock, we'll stop here. And now it's time for the Arati. Yes, 9 o'clock is the Arati? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
So yes, Bhakti Rasamrita Swami Maharaj.
Jai.